Georgia, 1849. The first complaint sounded ridiculous. Old Farmer Bennett rode into town one humid August afternoon and told the sheriff something strange. "There's no sound," he said. The sheriff frowned. "No sound of what?" "Anything." The room chuckled lightly. A plantation without sound? Impossible. Fields were never quiet. Not in Georgia. Cotton harvesting meant shouting overseers. Metal tools striking soil. Wagon wheels creaking. Workers coughing. Wind through crops. Horses stamping. Plantations were loud by nature. But Bennett insisted. "I've lived beside that land 20 years, he said. "Even at night, you hear something. Always something." "And now?" the sheriff asked. "Nothing. If you're drawn to strange historical mysteries that don't quite make sense at first, subscribe now, because this one only gets darker." The land Bennett referred to belonged to Elias Whitaker, a wealthy, private plantation owner who purchased the property in 1829. For the first few years, nothing seemed unusual. Deliveries arrived regularly. Cotton shipments left on schedule. Taxes were paid promptly. The fields always appeared harvested. But neighbors began noticing something they couldn't explain. No singing, no shouting, no crack of whips, no grinding machinery, no night activity, just stillness. And stillness in the rural South was unnatural. Bennett described riding his fence line at dusk. The wind moved through the cotton, but it made no sound. He claimed it felt as if the land swallowed it. Men laughed at him in the general store. "Maybe Whitaker runs a polite plantation," one joked. But over time, others began noticing. Mrs. Holloway, who lived nearly a mile away, said she would sit on her porch at sunset. Every plantation around hers echoed with distant labor noise, except one. Whitaker's land remained disturbingly quiet. And yet, the crops flourished, year after year. Perfect harvests, consistent shipments, profits reported in public records. So how does a plantation run silently for 20 years? That was the question no one could answer. Whitaker himself rarely appeared in town. When he did, he was calm, polite, reserved, never defensive, never angry, just controlled. "You worry too much," he once told Bennett directly. "Silence is efficient." Efficient, the word lingered. By 1855, rumors began circulating beyond local gossip. Travelers passing through would comment, "That plantation feels wrong." One claimed he stopped his horse near the boundary fence and listened. Nothing, not even birds. The sheriff rode out personally one afternoon. He stopped at the fence line and removed his hat. He listened. Wind touched the trees. But inside the fields, stillness. He stepped through the gate unannounced. And immediately, sound returned. Distant tools clanking. Men moving. Voices murmuring. Normal. He walked deeper. Everything appeared functional. Workers harvesting. Overseers pacing. Wagons rolling. Nothing suspicious. Whitaker approached calmly. "Can I assist you, Sheriff?" The sheriff nodded slowly. "Just routine observation." Whitaker smiled. "You'll find nothing unusual here." And he didn't. But when the sheriff rode back toward the road, the sounds faded again, abruptly, as if someone had turned a dial. That night, the sheriff admitted something privately to Bennett. "It's not that there's no sound," he said carefully. "It's that the sound doesn't travel. If this detail unsettled you, pause for a moment. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? And what do you think could cause sound to disappear like that?" By 1860, children dared each other to approach Whitaker's fence. They would clap their hands and listen. Echo outside, dead silence inside. Even thunder seemed muted above that land. But no one ever reported screams. No one reported escape attempts. No one reported illness outbreaks. No funerals. No new workers arriving publicly. And yet, deliveries continued. Food shipments increased. Construction materials were occasionally unloaded at night. Bennett swore he once saw large crates carried toward the center of the fields after midnight, not into the house, into the fields. That was what frightened him. Fields over crops, not crates. He approached Whitaker one final time in 1863. "You built something out there," Bennett accused quietly. Whitaker's expression did not change. "I've built efficiency." Efficiency doesn't swallow sound. Whitaker's eyes lingered just slightly longer than normal. "Perhaps you're listening for the wrong things." That sentence haunted Bennett for years. Because maybe Whitaker was right. Maybe the neighbors were listening for screams, for violence, for rebellion. But what if the plantation wasn't silent because nothing was happening? What if it was silent because everything was happening somewhere else? In 1869, after 20 full years of reported silence, a traveling surveyor requested permission to map the property lines for updated records. Whitaker hesitated. For the first time in 2 decades, he hesitated. And that was when suspicion turned into investigation. Because silence can hide cruelty, but it can also hide something far more deliberate. And beneath those fields, something was constructed that no one above ground could hear. If you think this is just superstition, wait until you hear what the surveyor discovered when he measured the center acreage. The surveyor arrived in early spring. His name was Daniel Reeves. Young, methodical, not from the county, which made him useful. Outsiders notice what locals normalize. If you're still here, subscribe now, because this is where the mystery shifts from rumor to structure. Reeves carried precise instruments, leveling rods, measuring chains, drafting maps. Whitaker greeted him at the gate personally. "You'll find the property unchanged," Whitaker said smoothly. Reeves nodded. "I'm only here to confirm acreage boundaries." Whitaker smiled. "Of course." But his eyes didn't. Reeves began near the perimeter. Everything aligned with older records. He moved inward gradually, measuring elevations. That was when he noticed it. A slight depression across the central cotton field. Subtle, too subtle for casual observation, but consistent. The land dipped inward, almost like a shallow bowl, over a large circular area. Reeves frowned. "Soil settling?" he muttered to himself. He tapped the ground with his metal rod. The sound echoed differently. Muted. Hollow. He froze. Tapped again. Outside the circular area, solid thud. Inside it, faint resonance. Not loud, but different. Reeves looked around. Workers were harvesting nearby, but they made almost no noise. Tools moved. Cotton shifted. But everything felt distant, contained, as if he were hearing through walls. Whitaker approached casually. "Is something wrong?" Reeves hesitated. "The soil here hasn't been disturbed before." Whitaker didn't blink. "Cotton requires rotation." Reeves nodded slowly. He knelt and pressed his ear closer to the earth. Silence. Then a faint vibration. Not sound. Vibration. Like distant machinery. Very deep. Very controlled. He stood quickly. "You use underground irrigation?" Whitaker smiled faintly. "Innovation is necessary for efficiency." Reeves felt unease tighten in his chest. Irrigation systems didn't hum like that, and they didn't span perfectly circular depressions. He completed his measurements, but marked the center acreage separately in his notes. That night, he stayed at Bennett's farmhouse. Over dinner, Bennett leaned closer. "You hear it?" Reeves didn't answer immediately. "I felt something." Bennett nodded slowly. "They say he expanded underground years ago." "Expanded what?" "No one knows." Reeves thought of the depression, the hollow echo, the vibration. "Has anyone dug?" Bennett shook his head, not without Whitaker knowing. That night, Reeves couldn't sleep. The silence outside felt heavy. He stepped onto the porch near midnight. From Bennett's land, you could see the faint outline of Whitaker's fields in the moonlight. Still, unnaturally still. Then Reeves saw something that made his stomach drop. A section of cotton in the center shifted, not from wind, from below. A square of soil lifted slightly, just inches, then settled again, as if something beneath had adjusted. Reeves' breath slowed. Fields don't move. The next morning, he returned under the excuse of rechecking elevation variance. Whitaker did not greet him this time. Reeves walked directly to the depression. He waited, listened. Nothing. Workers harvested around him in eerie quiet. He noticed something else now. No one spoke, not even quietly. No commands. No corrections. movements synchronized, mechanical. Reeves dropped his measuring rod deliberately. It hit the soil with a loud clang. The workers did not flinch, did not look up, did not react, as if they couldn't hear it. Reeves slowly turned. That was when realization began forming. The silence wasn't absence. It was insulation. He walked toward the plantation house. Whitaker stood on the porch, watching. "You've completed your survey?" Whitaker asked calmly. "Almost." Reeves held Whitaker's gaze. "Your central acreage, it's hollow." A brief pause. Then Whitaker smiled. "All land is hollow if you dig deep enough." Reeves stepped closer. "What's beneath it?" Whitaker's eyes darkened slightly. "Progress." The word lingered. Reeves left before sunset, but instead of returning to town, he doubled back after dark. If this is starting to feel wrong to you, like the video now. Because what Reeves discovers next is not superstition. It's architecture. He approached quietly through the tree line. The moon was high. The plantation was silent as ever. He moved toward the center depression and waited. At exactly midnight, the soil shifted again, this time clearly. A hidden hatch, perfectly disguised beneath cotton rows, lifted slowly from below. Dim lantern light glowed upward, and from the opening, men emerged, not to escape, but to rotate shifts. Reeves felt the blood drain from his face. They weren't working the fields. They were coming from beneath them. One by one, workers climbed out silently. Another group descended below. No overseer shouted. No chains clanked. Because everything below ground was engineered. Reeves moved closer, heart pounding. He crouched near the hatch once it sealed again, and pressed his ear to the earth. This time, he heard it, faint, contained, dozens of movements. Tools striking stone, metal sliding, low mechanical grinding, not agricultural. Industrial. Whitaker wasn't harvesting cotton. He was building something underground, something large enough to require 20 years of silence. And that was when Reeves understood why sound never escaped the fields. Because the real plantation wasn't above ground at all. Reeves didn't leave. He should have. But curiosity can overpower survival. He waited until the second rotation began. Midnight. The hatch lifted again. Smooth, controlled, perfectly engineered. No creaking wood. No rust. This wasn't improvised. This was designed. Two men climbed down. Reeves moved closer. When the hatch began lowering again, he lunged. His hand caught the edge. For 1 second, the mechanism resisted. Then it stopped. Someone below had halted it. A lantern glow flickered upward. A voice came from the darkness. "You're not scheduled." Reeves swallowed. "I'm not one of them." Silence. Then another voice. "Let him down." The hatch reopened slightly. Reeves slid inside before he could change his mind. The door sealed above him, and the world changed. The air was cooler, filtered, not damp like a cellar, structured. Reeves stood in a tunnel reinforced with timber beams and brick lining. The walls weren't dirt. They were constructed. Lanterns hung at measured intervals. Ventilation shafts ran upward, likely hidden between crop rows. That's why no sound escaped. It wasn't silence. It was soundproofing. He followed the tunnel. It widened gradually. The hum grew stronger, low, mechanical, controlled. Then he reached it. A vast underground chamber stretching farther than he could see. Rows of workers, not in chains, but positioned in stations, operating levers, cranking mechanisms, carving into stone walls, some forged metal. Others assembled strange wooden frames reinforced with iron. This wasn't forced chaos. It was organized production. Whitaker stepped from behind a column. "You shouldn't be here," he said calmly. Reeves turned slowly. "What is this?" Whitaker's expression remained steady. "Independence." Reeves stared at the machinery. "You built a factory." Whitaker shook his head. "No." He gestured toward the carved stone walls. "These tunnels run beyond the plantation." Reeves felt his stomach tighten. "How far?" Whitaker smiled faintly. "Far enough." Reeves noticed maps pinned along one wall. Detailed underground layouts, connecting routes, extending toward neighboring lands, toward town, toward the rail line. "You've been tunneling under the county," Reeves whispered. "For 20 years," Whitaker replied. The hum intensified. Reeves realized what the vibration had been. Excavation. Controlled, continuous excavation. But why the silence? Reeves asked. Whitaker stepped closer. "Because power grows best in quiet." He gestured again. "They think I harvest cotton." Reeves looked around. "You're building something." Whitaker's eyes sharpened. "A network." Reeves studied the workers. They moved precisely. Disciplined, not broken. Trained. How do you keep them silent? Reeves asked. Whitaker tilted his head. "Have you heard anyone scream?" Reeves shook his head. Whitaker leaned closer. "Exactly." That answer disturbed Reeves more than cruelty would have. There was no visible punishment. No whips. No guard shouting. Yet absolute obedience. Whitaker walked him along the chamber's edge. "You see chains," Whitaker said softly. "I see leverage." Reeves' voice lowered. "What are you planning?" Whitaker pointed to a partially completed tunnel. It sloped upward, toward town. "When the time comes," Whitaker said, "control won't come from fields." Reeves finally understood. Whitaker didn't want louder plantations. He wanted invisible reach, supply routes, hidden passages, access beneath rail lines, storage, movement unseen. "You're building a second world," Reeves whispered. Whitaker nodded once. "Above ground is appearance. Below ground is influence." Reeves felt trapped. "If this collapses—" "It won't," Whitaker interrupted calmly. "I hired engineers from the north, paid in silence." Reeves' breath slowed. "You've been expanding this for 20 years?" Whitaker smiled faintly. "And no one heard a thing." The workers continued their synchronized movements. The hum echoed through stone. Reeves turned slowly. "How many tunnels?" Whitaker didn't answer directly. Instead, he said, "How many neighbors do you think have basements?" Reeves' pulse spiked. "You're under their homes?" Whitaker's smile widened slightly. "Progress requires proximity." That was when Reeves understood the true terror. The silence wasn't protection. It was concealment. Whitaker wasn't isolating himself. He was embedding himself. Under roads, under property lines, under structures. Invisible. Waiting. Reeves stepped back. "You can't keep this hidden forever." Whitaker's tone stayed even. "I already have." Then the lantern light flickered. Just slightly. A tremor moved through the chamber. Not natural. Mechanical. Reeves looked up. Dust drifted from the beams. Whitaker's calm expression tightened for the first time. One of the workers rushed forward. "Sir, Section 3 pressure is rising." Whitaker's eyes darkened. "Seal it." The hum changed pitch. Lower. Strained. Reeves felt it through his boots. Something deep within the tunnels had shifted. Whitaker looked at Reeves. "This is why outsiders are inconvenient." Reeves realized something else in that moment. If these tunnels ran beneath town, and if pressure was rising, then whatever they had disturbed underground wasn't just soil. It was something else. Older, compact, unstable. The ground trembled again. Harder this time. Lantern swung. Workers froze. And from somewhere deep in Section 3, a cracking sound echoed upward. Not mechanical. Geological. Whitaker's voice lowered. Everyone containment. Reeves stared at the ceiling as fine debris fell like ash. For 20 years they had dug in silence. But the earth had finally responded, and it was no longer quiet. The crack wasn't loud at first. It was deep, like something shifting miles below. Whitaker didn't shout. He didn't panic, but his composure thinned. "Seal Section 3, he repeated. Workers moved instantly. Levers pulled. Metal gates slid into place along the tunnel corridor. Reeves felt the vibration intensify under his boots. Dust fell heavier now. The hum of machinery became unstable, uneven, strained. Then a thunderous crack split through the chamber. Not wood, not iron, stone. One of the side walls in the distance fractured open, A violent burst of compressed air shot through the tunnel. Lanterns extinguished in a chain reaction. Darkness swallowed the chamber. Someone screamed. The first sound of panic Reeves had heard since entering. The ground dropped slightly beneath them. Not a full collapse. A shift. Whitaker grabbed a lantern from a wall hook and relit it with shaking precision. "Contain it," he barked. But containment was already failing. From a fractured wall in Section 3, water exploded inward. Not a stream. A surge. Black. Pressurized. Decades of digging had punctured an underground aquifer. The earth had been holding that weight for centuries. Until now, workers scrambled. Some ran for higher tunnel sections. Others tried forcing secondary gates shut. The water struck the chamber floor like a living thing. Reeves was thrown against a timber beam. The lantern dropped from his hand. Whitaker stood frozen for one crucial second. And in that second, Reeves saw something new in his face. Not fear, realization. He had built outward, but never upward. There were no true escape shafts, only controlled ventilation tunnels, too narrow for mass exit. The water surged again. Stronger. The hum of machinery died instantly as wheels and gears jammed. The chamber filled ankle deep in seconds. Reeves grabbed Whitaker's coat. "We have to go." Whitaker shook him off. "Section 5 can redirect." Another violent tremor cut him off. The ceiling groaned. A support beam cracked. Workers were shouting now. The silence that had defined the plantation for 20 years shattered into chaos. Above ground, cotton fields began to sink. The circular depression Reeves had measured started collapsing inward. From Bennett's farmhouse, neighbors watched in horror as the center of Whitaker's plantation caved. No explosion, no fire, just soil folding inward like wet cloth. Back underground, water reached Reeves' knees. He spotted the main tunnel they had entered through. "Up," he shouted. Some workers followed. Others hesitated, waiting for instruction. Whitaker remained rooted. He looked at the maps pinned to the wall, at the tunnels stretching toward town, at 20 years of silent expansion, all of it built on hollowed ground. The water slammed into Section 4's barrier. The gate bent inward with a metallic scream. Reeves made a decision. He grabbed one worker and pulled him toward the entrance shaft. "Move!" They climbed the sloped corridor as water rushed behind them. The vibration intensified. Timber beams snapped like matchsticks. Halfway up, the hatch above them buckled. Soil pressed downward. Reeves shoved upward with everything he had. The hatch cracked open just enough. Fresh night air burst in. He dragged himself out onto the cotton field and rolled away seconds before the entire center collapsed. The ground swallowed the hatch completely. A violent implosion sucked soil downward. The circular depression became a crater. Whitaker never emerged. Neither did most of the underground network. The plantation did not explode. It folded, silently. By sunrise, half the field were gone. A massive sinkhole scarred the land where cotton once grew in unnatural quiet. Neighbors gathered. No one understood. They only knew the silence was over. Bennett found Reeves sitting at the edge of the crater, mud-covered, shaking. "What happened?" Bennett whispered. Reeves stared into the darkness below. He dug too deep. Weeks later, investigators arrived. They discovered fragments of brick lining, metal frameworks, collapsed tunnels. But most of it was unreachable, buried under thousands of tons of earth and water. Official reports called it unstable soil collapse due to irrigation miscalculation. No mention of tunnels beneath neighboring land. No mention of underground routes. Those maps were never recovered. But here's what stayed with Reeves for the rest of his life. The silence had not been oppression. It had been insulation. And insulation only works until pressure finds a way out. For 20 years, the county believed nothing was happening because they heard nothing. But sometimes the most dangerous systems are the ones that operate quietly, invisible, expanding, until the ground itself refuses to hold them. And when the earth finally answers, it doesn't whisper, it swallows.